we appreciate your continued advocacy and attendance. So my name's Tommy Butler, Massport Deputy Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations, and we are tonight at our second pre-construction meeting for the Cypher Street Improvements Project. The first one was held at the end of August, and we committed to having a second here in September. So we are back here tonight. So for an agenda tonight, we will do some introductions, go through the project scope, and hopefully hit each of these before we get questions. But if you have questions along the way, I think we have a manageable crowd where we can try to address your questions as they come up. So again, this is, as you know, many of you have been in these seats for these meetings, but we have had a number of meetings with tonight bringing us to, I would say, the 8th, is that it? So we committed to doing the project website after some input after the last meeting. We appreciated the input, and so we were able to stand up this cypherproject.com. So as you can see, if you haven't been on it, it's I would say user-friendly because I'm not very good with technology, and I was kind of able to navigate around. So a lot of good information on there about kind of the meetings leading up to this, presentations, and then I think going forward, the community LSP, Eileen Gladstone from GEI, will be providing updates on there, which is a very helpful tool, I think, to try to get information out in as many ways as we can as things evolve on the project. So cypherproject.com is that website. So Dan, I think you're up to go through the scope.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, everyone. My name is Dan Dragani. I'm the Massport project manager, owner's project manager. So to go briefly through the scope of work here, you can see the graphic in the upper right-hand corner shows the project location. So we go all the way from Richard Street down Cypher, East Street to Fargo Street. The work on Richard Street primarily consists of essentially taking a driving lane and turning that into bicycle facilities. The Cypher Street piece is the full depth reconstruction piece. So we will be building bicycle facilities from the South Boston Bypass Road to D Street. The bicycle facilities will then connect to the facilities that exist on D Street today. We'll also be creating a new roadway connection between D and E Street. That E Street piece is essentially a resurfacing project and kind of establishing that existing road to current maintenance standards. And Fargo Street includes full depth construction, including street lighting and so forth. You can see in the bottom right of the PowerPoint here is a graphic of Cypher Street and what it is proposed to look like. So you can see there are elevated bicycle facilities and pedestrian facilities and new roadway lane assignments. As I go to the next slide here, this is Richard Street proposed. You can see in the upper left-hand corner is the actual existing condition of Richard Street. As I said before, we're essentially taking a driving lane and turning that into bicycle facilities that will be elevated, and also that will improve pedestrian access as well, new street lighting and so forth. So with that said, I'm going to have the general contractor, D.W. White, come up here. Steve Cobb is the project executive from D.W. White, and he'll introduce D.W. White and the team.
I believe someone has a question if you want to.
Should we wait at the end or ask questions as we go, or how do you guys want to?
So I think we have a manageable enough group where if you hopefully you're not every slide, but if you have a question on a slide that just went by, we can answer it quickly. Yeah.
So it was a quick question, and the neighborhood sure brought it up. Tom Reddy, I live over on Walnut Street. We should have brought it up in the PIC meeting that Boston Transportation had, and that's with regard to street trees on the new Cypher Street. I don't know how PIC approved the project, but we'll go back and ask them if street trees are going to be somehow included in the design, but I just asked the team to consider that, right? I mean, this part of South Boston doesn't have any street trees, or very few street trees, and so the more the merrier that can be put in, right? So
Yeah, and so I, obviously, when we inherited this project at 100% design, the dimensions were the dimensions, but I can commit to you tonight that whatever Massport property we have along this route, we will put some green in there. We will try to include trees where we can, and we will include greenery where we can. I spoke before talking to my real estate department, but I think with Nui and myself here, I think it's the right thing to do, and I think we can commit to green. I don't know a number for you, and I obviously the ownership is shared along the way, but on Massport property, we commit to putting trees and some green. All right.
And that's also something, Tom, that came up in the PIC sessions as well, and we did work with the city on that. MCCA actually allowed us to plant some additional trees on their parcel, but as Tommy mentioned, I think we're committed to more as well.
So is there any way at some point in the future you guys can kind of come back with us and say, hey, this is what we ended up with, right?
Yeah, we'll get going on a graphic quick here, and we'll turn it around for you. Give us a week or so.
Yeah,
and,
I don't go crazy. You just kind of take an existing picture and draw some circles on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's great separations, so Cypher is actually higher
Yeah.
than the replacement area, so we have to take a look how we're gonna plant the tree and make sure, that slope area works.
Thank you.
Excellent comment, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellie?
I was just going to say, I think we have other priorities for trees.
Yeah, no, but
No offense, Tom.
Do you want some trees?
No, I don't, frankly.
You don't want
No,
trees?
No.
You don't want street
No
trees?
trees, no need for trees down there.
It's gonna be cars. We need trees.
Cars need trees? No. Anyway, I don't want to disagree, but I don't want to be disagreeable, but go on.
All right, we'll talk about it.
Presentation. Yeah.
One other thing on the graphic. My name is Rich Evans. I'm with the Gate of Heaven neighborhood group. These bike lanes are going into the Hall Road. Is that their destination point?
So
You're going to have a bike lane cross one of the major. It doesn't. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I think those don't connect well.
Sure.
So then, can I have Steve up there, because I think that's a design, we look at that very closely, so Steve is with niche engineering, and they look at it from a traffic signal, lane crossing point of view.
Yeah, Steve Farr from Niche Engineering.
Yeah.
So, yes, this is the South Boston Bypass Road, and we're looking eastbound on Cypher Street. So yes, we're going to cross the South Boston Bypass Road, and because it's such a busy intersection, we're going to have a dedicated bicycle signal. So a separate signal and separate phase for just the bicycles.
Do you think they're really going to obey those?
We're dealing with the same thing at the mouth of Conley Terminal. There's a bicycle signal that's been installed there too by the city, and this was a traffic plan and design that was agreed and planned with the city. So this is what we have to work with.
I just come here to seek the truth. Now, I've been told by my state senator that Cypher Street work is not going to happen. It's on hold. There's some permits you guys haven't got yet. But the real question I have is looking at the map here that the St. Vincent Association put out recently about tonight's meeting. Now, honestly, can you tell me what the purpose of you said before we weren't widening Fargo Street, you weren't doing any cosmetic work there. From what I understand now, it's expanded Fargo Street. You're coming down East Street, you're going across Cypher Street onto the Hall. What is Massport's purpose to get involved in a street that doesn't belong to them, to streets that don't belong to them, other than the fact that you have something in mind for Massport, people or business?
So
And I need to know the truth.
we'll take them
That's
one.
all I'm
at-
asking.
We'll take them one at a time. We've attained all the permits that we've needed prior to even the last meeting that we had. We had all the permits we needed. We have a ramp plan that we talked about that is with DEP, that is submitted to DEP. That is that we have a plan that we're going to work in the Tosca regulated area according to the guidelines. That plan was submitted. There was comments that were given back to us from DEP with a few questions. Those questions were answered, and from our knowledge that we, from DEP, is that we have sufficiently submitted a RAM plan that meets all DEP approvals. So that's the honest to God truth from this project, is that the DEP doesn't issue a permit. We had all of our permits prior to even the last meeting. We submitted our RAM plan. They had questions. We gave answers, and we got that we have submitted a successful RAM plan to do the work.
Now, part two.
Part two. So, like we said, there is no plan to make Fargo Street more appealing to trucks coming off of Summer Street. As you see, the pilot is
The trucks coming off Summer Street?
to come down East Street to go to Cypher Street. That is not the plan. The bus truck pilot has begun on Monday. The striping is out there. The lanes are out there. It tells you where the trucks have to be when they come out. That's where the trucks are going to be. They will not be crossing over to get into Fargo to E to Cypher. The involvement for this project, as we maintained all along, was because we are a truck generating company. Truck routes are important. This was an unsafe truck route, and there was federal funding that was involved with this project. And this project needed to be done in order to get that federal funding.
You couldn't have extended the runway or something? You have to commit to the residential
It was
community?
worked on with the Walsh administration to that it would be tied to this project with the state and with the city and with Massport.
So you're telling me between now and in the future that Massport will never run 18-wheelers down Fargo, down E, across Cypher Street to the Hall Road? Is that true? And they won't come reverse, they won't come back that way? Trucks coming off the Hall Road, up Cypher, up E, across Fargo, back to Conley Terminal. You're telling me that will never happen?
I'm not telling you that won't happen. I'm telling you that the trucks will not, they won't be, their main route is not going to be, their available route will not be Fargo Street to E Street to Cypher to the Hall Road.
Is it an alternative route?
No. An alternative route, yeah, I can't tell you that Cypher, we've said that the whole time, Fran, that an alternative route for trucks, if they came off Pump House, there was no reason for them to come off and not go Pump House, but they could come off Hall Road, Cypher, E to Fargo to Summer. That we never said that they wouldn't do that, but we always maintained that it wouldn't be Conley trucks coming from Conley down E onto Cypher. We maintained that from the whole time.
Okay, you got to understand my concern.
I do, as long as I'm at Massport, I will guarantee that I will fight that everything that we talked about during this project doesn't happen. The East Street punch through with those Army parcels, that was part of the plan. The plan was to have the trucks come down off Summer, down, but that never happened. And that's not gonna happen because we agreed that this was the plan.
If you could tell me, like, it was, we're doing this so we can get like cruise passengers into Black Falcon Terminal. That would be, that's all right. You know what I mean? I'd like to hear something like that. But
They are parking down.
I'm just glad to hear that.
The parking is there for the cruise.
Huh?
The cruise parking is there.
Well, I'm just glad to hear that this is not a alternative truck route for you guys. And
Coming off of Summer Street, no, it's just not.
Just to clarify, Tom, you said the cruise parking, is it off of East Street, or where is
Cruise parking's on East Street.
that big, the Army base or the whatever,
Yeah.
the DOD?
Further down towards east.
Yeah, further down after the
Towards
chassis.
But
right.
when all of it, I have one more question, sorry, I don't mean to tie up.
That's all right.
When this is all said and done, I think, maybe I misheard you, trucks coming off the Hall Road can actually take a right on Cypher Street and still come out to D, is that correct?
They would come out. They would come out if that is the route that they've come off. They would probably go to E Street and they would come up E and Fargo to Summer. But that's not the most appealing route for them. They're going to probably continue to go Pump House.
No, because for 3 years, I've worked in Chelsea for 3+ years, and they were always coming off of that Hall Road, just before the road was closed, just a point of information.
Yep.
Hello, I'm Steve Cobb, DWI Construction. DWI is a family-owned business. It's been in operation since 1962. With me tonight is Zach Mangelson. He's the project manager on this job. We are going to walk through a little bit about the schedule and our upcoming activities. Mobilization started on 8/21. We commenced site prep on 9/5. On 9/20, we started some minor work in the non-Tosca area between D and E, preparing for the new Cypher Street. Roadway construction in the Tosca area is scheduled to start on 9/25 next week. We expect to have base paving down on Cypher Street in the Tosca area and between D and E by the beginning of December of this year. Next April, we'll begin work on Richard Street. We will also continue work on Cypher Street and open Cypher Street back up to traffic in June of 24. In July of 24, we'll start work on Fargo Street. November 24, we'll finish Richard Street, South Boston Bypass intersection, and Fargo Street, and final paving and line striping will be spring of 2025. The limits of the Tosca work are shown on the screen. They go from the West Service Road to C Street. That area is specifically fenced in separately for the rest of the project, and is the area where the Tosca contamination is, and we have to follow the specific RAM plan and federal guidelines. I'm going to speak specifically about the work in the Tosca area. We have divided that phase, and I spoke about this before, into 5 steps of construction to minimize the opening of Tosca contaminated soil. We will open and load out and remove from the site what we can on a daily basis and cover and cap it for the overnight. There will be no Tosca soil left exposed at the end of a shift or overnight. Every day we'll work and excavate what we can, get it capped. We have the stage 1 and stage 2. We have some site lighting on the side of the roadway to put in as we go. So we'll get the light bases in as we excavate the Tosca soil, and then we'll get the cap on, and the conduit for the lighting will run in the top. In stage 3, we will install our drainage utilities that go in the pavement. We will not touch the existing pavement in the roadway. We will leave it in place until stage 4 and 5. We did that to allow us to keep down dust, not have Tosca soil exposed, and allow us to keep the truck tires clean, and they will go through a decontamination station before they leave the site as well. But by keeping the pavement and only removing the pavement 1 lane at a time in stages 4 and 5, we significantly reduce the Tosca exposure time for soils. Again, we'll only remove the pavement in the area we can handle in a day, excavate the soil below, and put a sealing layer of gravel down at the end of the shift. Are you talking traffic details?
Hold on, I would like to recognize Senator Collins. Thank you for joining us tonight, Senator. I want to say a few words before we get back to the presentation.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry, you're with Massport or the project?
No, DWI Construction.
Okay. So what you just described and what we've been learning is quite a significant amount of management of a site that has been declared incredibly contaminated. I know everyone in the room knows that. There's been nothing to describe officially, we've gotten answers, multiple different answers depending on who you talk to. Who owns this liability now and in the future? And the questions are why? Because multiple people had owned it, including the convention center. I don't see anybody here from the convention center. And without knowledge of the public or elected officials, accumulation of the ability to take on all of the work that would need to get done under one roof. They're nowhere to be found, Mass DOT. They left this conversation years ago and haven't been back in a public way. But last year, without knowledge, accumulated easements and went to the Boston Conservation Commission. Nobody goes there unless they have to, and everybody knows when you go. Yet you were here before us talking about a project that, bizarre that you would start there, given all of what, you're discussing. And we also learned that the Mass DOT must have been, the shoe fits wear it, in coordination with the Port Authority, put the most bizarre configuration of roadways on a freight corridor network that are usually just corridors, not. So what I'm saying tonight is you don't need to do this to clean up Cypher Street. If you're trying to make it a multimodal, whatever so we close it down. We still haven't heard back from DEP on your RAM that didn't get filed on the 16th. Spoke to them today.
Got approved on the RAM. We did get it.
Then we're using words that we didn't use before. Approval.
We got accepted RAM.
There was approval apparently given by the Boston Conservation Commission after a meeting, public meeting, a project now that the licensed site professionals have their license on the line for, and as a contractor, to get approval to open the street up in a way that it hasn't been and has been warded against, including the convention center, the previous owner. In that meeting in May, you can read the minutes, I know some of you already have, they're incredibly confused with who's actually involved here, whose project is it. The engineer on behalf of Mass DOT, at that point, Massport nowhere to be found, convention center nowhere to be found, no one anywhere to be found. The hearing that had no public support or testimony for anybody in the public, elected officials. And now this project, which is essential really to take on funding and reimbursement, which we're okay with, but you don't need to open that street up to do it. And we're asking Massport to tap the brakes on this section officially and start with East Street. Because the E to Cypher Street, right? It's an E to Cypher Street thing. It's not just Cypher Street. Start the project in East Street if it's about that. And begin with a median across Summer Street so trucks aren't coming through from Conley Terminal. Everyone likes to say that, I had the conversation with the CEO the other day about this. Oh no, we don't believe the truck. Why would you put it on the freight corridor network if you weren't trying to encourage trucks to go to Conley Terminal?
The trucks can't leave the bus truck lane.
Pardon me?
The trucks won't be able to leave the bus truck lane currently.
Yeah, that's happening on Summer Street now, though. I don't want to get into that. There's no management of that. They're in both lanes. My point is here to have a project that's a necessity, but in the Port Authority saying it's not to get trucks to come through this side of town to get to Conley Terminal. No documents say otherwise. And we would like copies of the MOU between Mass DOT, Massport, and whoever else is passing paper. I mean, it's like the mortgage crisis when people didn't even know where their mortgage was. It was on 3 steps away. So this is unprecedented in my career. So we're asking Massport, tap the brakes on this section. There's no need for it as it relates to digging up the dirt that we know is filthy, exposing the community down here up front, and then take this off the freight corridor network. Because if it's not really to get trucks through Conley Terminal, you'll do that. So, at great risk, you'll move forward with this. Because we're taking it up to the next level, and we're going to speak at the board tomorrow about it. So we're asking this section, because whatever clarity you claim you're getting, I'm getting different. DEP.
I would just say that we have an accepted RAM plan from DEP.
Well, no, somebody submitted a RAM plan. Again,
We submitted a RAM plan that was they had some questions that they came back with.
Assuming the approvals that were received last year at the Boston Conservation Commission, where the board had such consternation that they didn't know what to do. They said, well, they didn't vote on it. The only one that day that didn't get a vote. And somehow stamps are put down a few weeks later because of some MOU and paperwork that nobody's ever seen. So, Massport can go forward with this. You'll be the subject of our hearing on October 5th. We're discussing regulations. DOT is going to be brought into that as well. So, if the Massport's going to continue forward and start here, which makes no sense at all, given all you talked about, is that what's going on East Street? Is that what's going on Cypher Street? This stuff?
This is.
No, I'm asking the professional here from
the most surgical work that you find.
Is what are the challenges and the burdens that you're not going to put on the community you face here? Is it the same in Richard Street and East Street? Or is this the part of your project that's got the only level of contamination that's delivering an AUL?
I will let the environmental people that worked on this job for multiple.
Can I just say something to this? I'm sorry. Thank you, Senator. If you go out there today along Cypher Street, there are potholes, there are sinkholes, there are drainage issues, and there.
Massport and the agencies didn't give a damn about it for years. Now all of a sudden, there's a flipping over backwards. We know why. It's to attain funding. So what I'm saying is tap the brakes, because the sewers that you took out can get put back. And there's no drainage issues. This isn't Morrissey Boulevard, with all due respect. This is not Morrissey Boulevard. When it rains, there's nothing going on there.
This is the most surgical construction you're ever going to see.
Unnecessary. In something Massport will never do, because it's unnecessary. Except you're taking on the liability for the convention center. During the beginning of the process, you're taking on the liability from the convention center and other parties. That's Massport at one point, it's DOT at another. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
and there's no trust here. Zero.
Project, we believe that this is the most safe method.
But if you felt that way from the beginning, they would have been upfront on that. And you haven't.
I would say since we took over a year ago, this is the 8th meeting. We punted on the pick.
Mass DOT walked away for a reason.
We punted on pick.
They walked away for a reason. If you look in the online, the first presentation's DOT's. And now it's here. Because at the end of the day, they don't care about it. Massport does, because of the grant, and we understand that. But don't tell me that because of a grant, you're doing this. There's no way. There's a deal here with whether it's
There's a reason why this is done now, because you don't work in a Tosca area in November, December,
you don't need
January.
My point is, you don't need to open up the street.
During winter or harsh weather conditions.
You don't work during You had agreements that got you to do this, and people to back off on this being a truck route. We all know that.
The streets being open for lights.
What's really deceptive, and I'm not going to put this on Massport alone, but I do believe that there was knowledge of it. To pursue putting this thing on the freight corridor network in the way you did was unbelievable. You pushed DOT to agree with no one's knowledge or support to create a Cypher to D Street to First Street to E Street, a freight corridor network edition.
So this is a federally designated truck route?
No, it was not until Massport put it on with DOT several years ago. I read all this stuff. I'm here informed, not so you can tell me half the information, which is what people have been getting. So it's taken a while. It's not been easy. I do appreciate, Tommy's been providing some information in the DEP, but to get down to the bottom of this with DOT to find out the agency's push years ago, a number of years ago now, during the pandemic, to stick, when no one's paying attention, to stick these streets that are not a corridor by any means. You have to drive closer. Massport said, yes, drive closer into the neighborhood to get trucks to Connolly Terminal. It's in the documents, so you can't argue about it.
The convention center also uses this street for trucks, correct?
Yes. What's absurd is you right now, with the closure, you have it open for their trucks. Why Massport, Mass DOT, in their infinite wisdom, does not have them entering off of Wolf Road in the Hall Road is insane. You have trucks come on for 10 yards to take a left into the facility. Totally outrageous. It's outrageous. Totally outrageous. So you make special accommodation. You close the street, but you make special accommodation for trucks. Snakes to high heaven. I just don't see how.
I think you're going to see a slide later on. The the entrance of Fargo Street, that's the one of the bypass Fargo Street, has height restriction, it has turning radius, issues, it has pedestrian issues, because there was a recommendation for us to talk to the convention center about opening that. It has a lot of limitations to allow for safe truck operation.
Yeah, we want a meeting across Summer Street. So
We will support that.
support. You have
at the table. It's not in the scope of this project. We
well, then change order it. You guys are famous for that. Hold on. Get us the world records for change orders.
Let's narrow down.
No,
we gotta
and
go
the narrow
through
down
rest
is
of the
this.
conversation.
Massport should take this and chew on it a little further, because what he just described is a pile of trouble. And if you have a project that goes from E Street to Cypher Street and Richard Street in the name of we need to spend some money to make the case for the rest of this grant, and maybe it's going to be mobility, it either reeks that you're trying to drive people to Conley Terminal, or you'll say, yeah, that looks like a duck and walks like a duck. Maybe we should walk it back a bit. We have a big project here that extends to 2 different streets in an extension that you're trying to create. So take it off the freight corridor network.
We don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah, you do. You have the ability to weigh in.
No.
Absolutely, you do. You don't have the ability to weigh in on that? Okay.
We can weigh in.
Yeah.
We can have the conversation. We said we'd take First Street up. We'd sit at the table to have First Street take
We
it
want
up
the
part
freight
of
corridor
this
network.
conversation.
It makes absolutely no sense, and the CEO agreed. You have trucks that, if they do, come on the bypass road, continue to onto the bypass road until they loop around to Summer Street, taking you directly to the Marine Park and Conley Terminal with a short left. And you go to the place that's 2/3 commercial, not residential on this corridor. So unless you're going to take it off and advocate to take it off the freight corridor network, the secretary sits on the board and put the brakes on this thing that has everybody talking about surgery. Public Works is surgery? I mean, I don't know.
We hired an LSP for the community tonight. I think you may want to hear from her how this work
this is what I think. This is what I don't want any further. And I appreciate and respect everybody's position in this and how you came to it. Clearly, should have been done differently. And I appreciate that Massport did testing and they got a license. It should be the standard. It shouldn't be a favor or we have a trust issue on this because of the parties that are at play that are no longer in the picture of the environmental liability that's public and clear to a point where, filings that most of us weren't aware of up through the last several years, and then most recently, the acceptance of that. So Mass DOT accepts all the liability that it hands off temporarily to Massport to get it back and then distribute it. That stinks that I haven't. Nobody's buying it. So this right here, this section, that's the biggest trouble. To say that you need to do this to make a way that we're still trying to figure out what the end game is, because if we're committed to,
I think a lot of people
local
want
traffic.
lights. A lot of people want lights.
Yeah.
A lot of people want sewers. A lot of people want a clean street.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you don't need to open up the street to do that.
You need to put
don't.
duct banks in.
You don't.
You can't put electrical duct banks in the ground.
You have
to do
We
that.
have a site that looks awful, no question. On the surface, it's worse underneath. And uncapping that is a major risk to the community. And to pursue this, to me, says you're just snatching away the liability temporarily, paying for it through the federal grant that the convention center and other parties have, that Mass DOT is going to kick it back to somebody else afterwards and hightail out of town like they already did. Otherwise, their name would be on the bottom of
The
this
owner of the
presentation.
land always takes the liability back once the cap's restored.
Yeah. Again, this process that had reared its head last year outside of the public realm, and the slide deck from before last time around shows the period of time, then just a 4-year gap, and we're just back here. After the 4-year gap was, this got issues. So to see that this is going on first tells me something, and I'm asking, my colleagues are asking, that you put the brakes on this section of Cypher Street, start the project at East Street, put the median in there, take us off the freight corridor network. I will be making that case to the board tomorrow morning.
Okay, maybe we can continue
Yeah, we'll
with the
keep going with
presentation.
Tom with the presentation.
Thank you. So again, I'm Steve Farr, niche engineering, transportation engineer.
Oh, wait a second. Were you the proponent at the...
Can we
Boston?
finish?
No. This is great. Were you the proponent at the Boston Conservation Commission last year?
Yes, I did do the presentation.
By yourself. So who were you on behalf of at the time? When none of us knew what was going on.
I was working with Massport at the time.
Here we go. Thank you.
And I think everyone knew that from the start, that he was the engineer from Massport that was made.
I just want to make sure that, that what I read as the only sole person, there was no one else at the meeting with you, correct?
There was a lot of people at the meeting. The whole Conservation Commission was there.
No,
and there
I
was
mean-
several other applicants.
Yeah. For your proposal. Was there anyone, do you remember seeing
There
anybody?
was, I think Larry Cash, the project manager from Massport, was in attendance as well. And I think the
No
Massport
community, no-
environmental professional was there as well.
Just people on the proposal. Okay.
It was a Massport job at the time, so.
Right.
Mass
Public
Office
job,
there.
eminent domain, massive concern, Boston Conservation Commission, sneaky.
So this is a slide of the detour route, of one of the detour routes, and this was shown last time, and if those of you who were here back in August will remember that we did have the yellow line here, and at that meeting, we were asked, or there was concerns from some of you folks about the traffic on A Street, about detouring traffic coming down here, traffic that wants to go left on Cypher Street now would be going right and up to A Street. So we took another look at this and we modified this plan to add this blue line. And we have signage out here. This is the West Service Road extension. And so this is now our primary detour road. So as you're coming southbound, you're going to see a variable message sign, an illuminated sign, as well as other orange static signs, encouraging you, imploring you to take the right here as the detour and telling you that Cypher Street is closed up ahead. So this is the primary detour route, and this will hopefully keep the majority of the traffic off of A Street as it goes up here to Congress, back around and down to D Street and to the end of Cypher, which was the original destination if you wanted to take this left. We recognize that people quite often either miss signs, they're distracted, or they may not even believe the signs, and they may keep going. So you will see signs as you get closer to Richard Street here that again tell you, take a detour because Cypher is closed. And when you get to this point, you will recognize, as we all have, that the road is closed. There's a lot of signs here. You can see there's a fence and barricades. So you will have to take a right, especially if you're a non-commercial vehicle. As we all know, commercial vehicles are only allowed southbound, and non-commercial vehicles have to take a right. And so you'll be directed around as well. But that was one of the major changes we made since the last time as a result of the input that we got here from you folks.
Question?
I think you missed the point that was made by the people who were here last meeting. The majority of the traffic on 8th Street is exiting Boston southwest. So they're coming up 8th Street from Melchuk and out to Dorchester Avenue or Broadway or West 3rd Street, or wherever, however they can get out of that traffic jam that they're in on 8th Street coming out of downtown. The problem is not going back around to the convention center with the blue line. The problem here they're having is getting people off 8th Street and out to the southwest corridor.
We recognize that A Street is far from perfect and there's a lot of delay that we all see on a daily basis. But again, we want to address the traffic that we're diverting. This project cannot address the backup at A Street and at Broadway and West 2nd Street here that's backing traffic up to A Street. That's a larger network project that BTD will have to address.
Well, why would you direct them back into the neighborhood? You're coming back down D Street to go on 1st Street left or right to go back. I mean, why would you direct people back down that way?
So,
Even if it's Richard Street, you're blocking off.
what we're talking about is any traffic that come down that, well, we're trying to address the traffic that we detour because of our project. This project is not here to solve all of the other roadway traffic issues in this area. We did sit down with BTA earlier, to take a look at other traffic issues. And certainly, they will keep an eye on like A Street. A Street is a challenge. I think all of you live in the neighborhood know A Street is
Do you
challenge.
think this is not going to exacerbate what's going on out at that window right now?
Absolutely. Yeah, so if you
I
look
think
at
so.
PM peak, people trying to leave the city, A Street is challenging.
Again, we don't,
So let me say something, because this is my neighborhood, right?
yeah.
So we have I'm sorry. I live right on the blue.
A lot of us do.
Okay.
We
So-
lived here all our lifetimes. It affects all of
No,
us.
I get it.
Right.
We asked for two things. There's issues in the morning when people come up the Hall Road, right, and they want to take a right on Cypher to get to other parts of typically the South Boston waterfront. They're going to jobs. They're going to park somewhere, right? So they're coming up the Hall Road. They want to go right on Cypher, left on D, and go into the Cecil. Right? That's a normal kind of a traffic pattern. They can't do that anymore. So what we had asked Nick was, as they go continue down the Hall Road, to go underneath the convention center if they need to get to D Street. These guys said the convention center wouldn't let them. There's a road there.
Yeah.
It's blocked.
Yeah.
We could use some help. In the evening, as people come down Cypher Street, all you have to do is stand on the bridge and watch, right? What people used to do is, these are commuters going home, take a left on Cypher, take a right on D, and cut through the neighborhood and screw up the rest of South Boston. They can't do that anymore. Now they take a right, come out here, and jam up A, or right, just continue down the Hall Road because the state police don't enforce it. So we asked these
You're talking about
guys... Leaving. We asked these guys to go to Massport, open up the Hall Road southbound until the project's done, and then they can close it again. They were told Massport wouldn't allow that. So what we need is agency coordination and help, rather than just everything falling on Massport, right? That's what really would help.
Yeah,
The rest of all of this is interesting, but we really need those kinds of solutions, right?
I think it's bigger than that, Tom. I understand you saying at your doorstep.
Well, you just stand out there at 4 o'clock.
100%. I'm not saying that what's going on is great right now, but my concern about what they're trying to do at Cypher Street is a lot bigger than individuals, generational.
I'm talking about the detours.
Yeah, so the detour though, you can, again, the whole point, this is why I don't understand this whole concept of needing to go through this way to come to the terminal. If they stay on the Hall Road and they're going in to loop around, they can come out at Pump House Road, where they can get right now from the Hall Road.
So you will see other detour
If you're going to
later
the seaport,
on.
the waterfront,
Absolutely.
2/3 commercial,
Yeah, we
the
wanna
wisdom
look
of my predecessors takes you right there.
Yeah, we're looking at all origin and destination. So everybody, and there will be subsequent slides, Senator, you haven't seen yet. But for this one in particular, like I say, anybody who come down the bypass road that are non-commercial and Massport, because their concern is federal government will not allow. So if you come down and you're non-commercial, you're not allowed to go forward. So those few people who make that move, if I may, we're going to divert them onto West Service Road. The few that don't read sign, then our signage detour out there will divert them on to Richard Street. And again, those are the few. There will be subsequent slide. Maybe you can go to the next slide, please.
I mean, you have 4 entrances and exits, south of, or north, I should say, east, whatever it is, of the convention center to the interstate. You have one on one side that's, closer downtown,
We
another
do.
that's down on the waterfront,
Absolutely.
one that's on B Street.
Absolutely, and those will continue to use other like Congress Street to get to Interstate Highway. Those will continue to use. What we, as part of our project, because we close Cypher, anyone who views Cypher will no longer be, able to use Cypher. It's our obligation to make sure they know where they need to go, and those are the detours that we show.
I'm challenging the validity of the ability to do this and who has liability. If somebody has an issue, environmental issue, who are they engaged?
Are we talking about the detour or are we back on the
No, you're talking about
Right now,
checkers.
if we could just
We're
finish
back,
the
we're back
detour,
on
Senator.
this. We will have that conversation. You said you're coming to the board. We'll have the conversation around the environmental. We're trying to get the detours back out here. If you, we can go to
If you
that.
see a problem with the detour, we love to hear from you.
And then
this is
I
we'll
got a problem with the whole thing.
All right. We'll go back to the environmental, but we just wanted people to be able to see the detours. If they didn't make the last meeting, or they're on the live stream, to be informed about the detours. We can go back to the environmental after, or we're never gonna get through this slide deck.
So again, this is the detour if you're coming southbound on the South Boston Bypass Road. This is what you would do instead of taking the left. So the subsequent slides, this is what you would do if you're coming northbound on the South Boston Bypass Road. You want to take a right, the road is closed, so you would be directed, and there's signage out there to direct you along the Hall Road, out and around, and taking a right on Pump House, right on Summer, and left on D. And that brings you back down to where you were trying to get to in the first place, again, if you're headed in that direction. Likewise, in the reverse direction, if you're headed north on D Street and wanted to take a left, you can no longer do that because it's closed. So again, signage directs you to keep going north on D Street. In the reverse direction, take a right on Summer, left on Pump House, and then back around. And that gets you back to the other end of Cypher, which is what you're trying to go for in the first place. Likewise, if you're happen to come south on D Street and you wanted to take this right, you won't be able to. And again, signs will encourage you to continue taking a left on West First and on the left on E, and then back around. And we realize that, again, these are somewhat circuitous, and I would argue that if you happen to do this once, you're probably going to figure out a better way to get to where you want to go in the future. This is really only in case somebody is unfamiliar with the neighborhood and is maybe the first time here, and again, gets caught in some place where they're not familiar with, they can follow the signage. But if you're using these routes on a regular basis and you know the neighborhood, you're going to quickly figure out a different way. That's why I would suggest that people that are going to take a right on Richards and then go up A, they're not going to go all the way around. They're going to, if they're coming down here and they wanted to get to this area, and then they're working up here, they're going to go a different way to get down to D Street after the 1 or 2 times they do this.
Can I get a question? On the blue detour there, you show it dead ending at Cypher Street at the corner of D Street, the end Cypher. You got the blue line ends right there. Where do you suspect they go if they don't? Your detour ends there. Where do they go if they don't have any business at the convention center?
It doesn't end here.
They go into D Street, right?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If they're coming down D Street, there's a sign here that says this is closed to continue. There's a sign at this intersection that says take a left, and then there's a sign at E Street that says take another left. You go down to Fargo, there's a sign right here that says take a left on Fargo.
They're going to follow that. I just want to say this one thing, and I've used it on many occasions, a little derogatory, but the old saying is that you can't put 2 pounds of shit in a 1 pound funnel, right? Why? It's going to overflow. Right? And what are you doing to us? You're overflowing us with traffic that's unnecessary because of a small job you got contained on Cypher Street there. You got all these detours and crazy roads in and out of the area. But no one's going to follow them. It's too elaborate. Why the hell would I do that just to get to?
We have had them out. We have had people out every day since the detour it's been almost 3 weeks now, and we have had people out there monitoring, and so we have boots on the ground.
Tom, I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? It's just from experience. Living here my whole life, 67 years there, and I know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And people do not follow rules. Basically, if there's an easier way to get to a point, they're going to go from point A to point B. They're going to take that route.
I would say the majority of Cypher Street people, that is why they use Cypher Street, because it's an easy way from them. So
all the years that Cypher Street has been open, Tom, you can count the cars on your hand and feet that go through there on a course of in a 2-hour period. There's not a lot of traffic on Cypher Street.
My wife takes it to work every day.
I used to until you shut it down.
She works right at the...
Not a lot of traffic goes on Cypher Street.
So I got a couple more slides here, I think, and then...
I just want to keep going. We want answers. We want answers for our questions. We just want to keep showing us what you're going to do. We need to know what you're going to do for us.
We should have known this last year before you went to the Conservation Commission. all the stuff.
I agree.
This wasn't formulated at the Conservation Commission.
I mean, you had enough to ask for approval.
The Conservation Commission really doesn't care about detours. They just care about wetlands
No,
and
you-
the
yeah, you had it- my point
resources
is,
in their
You
jurisdiction.
had enough at the time to come clean on it. You didn't. And the parties that...
Disagree with that.
Really? You didn't have to go to a board to talk about a plan that you had, but you didn't have enough to do that in the community? Come on.
The Conservation Commission is an open hearing. It's publicized in the
Yep.
paper.
And nobody showed up to it, and nobody knows.
That is
Because...
everybody else's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
We're
publicized.
not attentive, yeah.
Ellie, were you invited to the conference?
So this is a slide showing the truck routes into the area. All the trucks will be using the South Boston Bypass Road. There will be no trucks through the neighborhood streets. They'll all come up to this northbound to get to the site, and they will loop around the Hall Road, around Pump House, and down D Street, and continue through the zone in a one-way operation. This is going to be the exit where Steve mentioned the wheel wash will be for the trucks to clean out. Again, we don't anticipate very many trucks per day, as Steve mentioned. We're working in small little areas, but all the trucks that come through will come in a one-way operation, and they will leave and go south to the South Boston Bypass Road down to 93.
Excuse me.
Go ahead,
A lot of trucks come down Pappas Way
Yeah.
from Conley Terminal and turn right on First Street, so they avoid this kind of situation, and that's just going to...
I would say I don't want to say that they're not doing that, but that turn is next to impossible. The Summer Street to Pappas is an extremely difficult, and even within wide open street with no one driving either way, it is really hard. There might be trucks coming out of Pappas Way. There's some industrial sites down there. You got UPS and stuff. It is almost...
I live right at that intersection of West First and Pappas Way. I see this all the time.
Yeah, I will tell the yard people to let them know, but those guys, they do not want to make turns that are going to injure people or injure themselves or that are really difficult, because all they have to do is go up one block onto Pump House, which is a really easy move that's going to get them where they want to go.
I agree with you.
I appreciate you letting me know. I appreciate you letting me know. I'll make sure each company gets an itinerary where they're supposed to be, where they're not supposed to be. I will make sure they're not taking that turn. That intersection is one of the worst in this community. It's like an F rating, and with trucks turning
It
there.
is, which makes it nonsensical to put this thing on the freight corridor network, to drive...
We're talking about
truck person
we're
coming
talking
off the
about
Hall
Summer
Road
and Pappas.
onto Cypher Street for cut through. But it's the same...
I know, I just
the
wanted
same
to address her
concept.
concern.
The same concept. It is a foolish thing to do because it's not easy for a truck. But so is taking people off of a haul road.
We're not taking anyone off.
We're not taking not the final
off.
destination.
When this project is done, no truck that is serving Conley Terminal, that is serving any property that Massport's associated with, or any other property, will be told, this is now the route you take.
That's only going to be declarative with removal of this route from the
If
freight
you
corridor.
go to the SBO and you get an agenda, Massport, will be at the table. When you tell Massport to show up somewhere, we have never said no to you, Senator.
It's not just show up. It's what I'm asking for is the public declaration in writing to Mass DOT that this doesn't need to be on the freight corridor network. Because it's not to take it to Conley Terminal. People who are going to be on the Hall Road coming up a highway, and they can go right to Pump House and Summer Street, which takes you to the industrial area, bypassing the residential area with a 2/3 commercial area, which is designed for. Because the plans coming down the line do not have Verizon in industrial in their mix for the Oxford Pappas site. That's a mixed use. Where that goes, Massport's involved in that to some degree. So
we own this.
Well, to some degree, you own something. At least most of it.
Yeah.
But so I just don't understand why you can't commit to taking up the freight corridor.
Do you know better than most in this room that there's no one in this room right now that can commit to that to you? There is leadership that can have that conversation with you. We can't commit to you tonight. We're here to talk about the presentation. We'll take all your concern and feedback. We'll hear it at the board tomorrow, but we cannot commit to you tonight. That won't happen. I committed to trees earlier, probably was above my pay grade to do that. I committed to trees, but I cannot commit to removal of designations tonight. I can't do it. I will surely be there probably when you have that conversation, but I can't commit to that tonight. Thank you.
So just moving on, this next slide is to talk to Tom's point about the Fargo Street detour. We did look into that, Tom. This is the detour that I think you're talking about as you come off the Hall Road. There's that right underneath the bridge, and it goes underneath the convention center, and it comes out at D Street. So I think, I don't want to speak for Tom, but I think your idea was to, instead of this circuitous route around Pump House, why can't we just connect it through the D Street that way? And as we've noted before, we did talk to the convention center. Again, we took some photos. There are height restrictions and limitations. Pipes you can see here. There is issues right now. The convention center has issues with their own trucks getting through there. You can see there's very tight turns. It's very dark, and it's just not ideal for a high volume of traffic. It is a private roadway. I know it's a public agency, but this does not appear to be something that is going to make things better, not in the short term. So that's why we're not going forward with that. Now we're going to talk about security and road control. I guess, Ian, you want to?
Meeting folks, Bill Phelps from Tetra Tech, providing environmental services to Massport on this project. And many of you have been at these meetings, and we've talked about the environmental issues and how we're going to monitor and mitigate them.
Speak up, please.
The initial part was closure of the Cypher Street segment.
Except the part for the convention center. Who you bought the liability from?
I didn't buy liability from.
We didn't buy any
There's an
liability.
agent on behalf of you. Your license online here. So the convention center gets full-blown access that they need. Yet we're closing off the street.
We felt that for
Further accommodation. No, Tom, I'm on board with the agent, getting agencies to be more accommodating and getting Mass DOT to open up the Hall Road. You can count me in on that. But we need this agency to be a little more cooperative.
And our thinking was there are a lot of good jobs that operate down at the convention center, and those trucks need to serve those jobs. We thought we were being a good team player by allowing those trucks to get into the loading docks.
Open up at Boston Wharf Road.
That's what we told they needed, and that's what we thought was happening.
At the request of the community and as part of the project, hearing the concerns about road control, the contractor has engaged a pest control company to
Speak up,
deploy,
please. Yes, Steve.
to deploy the bait traps and also a company to monitor and maintain them.
On the bait traps, sir, have you made any accommodations for the rear, eastern, or end cottontail rabbit that could possibly get into that box and access the bait?
We have, yep.
So tell me what you did. You made a smaller hole? What are we doing to prevent the rabbits from getting in there? We don't know.
Next question.
That's just a question. I love wildlife, particularly I'm concerned about it.
Spent many days chasing them myself.
So can we do something about that?
All right, go ahead, next one. Yeah. Why don't you use this? All right, I'll use it.
Okay. So as we've been discussing, we're setting up air monitoring stations. We have set up air
Answer my question. I asked you a question, direct question. Have you done anything to prevent rabbits from accessing the bait and the rodent traps?
I have not.
Okay, what are we going to do about it?
We'll talk to the road control company. Those designed for
That'd be a good start, wouldn't it? I thought you were the rodent control guy.
I am not.
So I'm not sure what the question is, but if you go out there, the area
We have a large,
fence off.
amount of the rear, eastern, lower end Cottontail Avenue.
Yep.
It occupies the area in question, Cypher Street and all the areas surrounding that. And they're small enough to get in a road and trap and access the bait. And if they do that, you're gonna kill a beautiful animal. So I want to know what accommodation you're going to make to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, so if you look at these traps.
Nui, it doesn't exist. Let's get to the next one. And
But I do want to mention that our construction zone are completely fenced off, so you're concerned about the beautiful rabbit getting to the construction zone. It is fenced off completely and it's secure, and we check it on a daily basis, right? So
You telling me the rabbits aren't going to get in there? Yeah?
Yes, we'll make sure.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. So we've been talking for the past several meetings about how we're going to monitor dust during construction. We've set up automated dust monitoring stations along the construction corridor. They report to a web-based portal that provides the information. We also take into consideration changes in the weather that may result in changes in the dust. And then monitoring that data, we can make changes to where the dust monitors are located as the weather conditions change. These are typical setups. Some of them you've seen around the community. We'll talk later about the ones we've installed in the parks at the request of the community. So the dust monitoring program was developed to provide multiple layers of safety. As we've talked in the past, we've calculated dust limits based on specific sections of the corridor. So using all that data that we collected from the soil borings, we've calculated dust limits for each section of the construction corridor. We've set a dust action limit and a dust response level, and the action limit is the high end where if we achieve that, construction activities will stop and we'll reevaluate the situation until dust levels are brought down. We understand why the dust levels were created in the first place. And the dust levels have to come down to below the response level, which is half of that action level. And this is all monitored via this telemetry system. Next slide.
and I'm sorry, I just want, before anyone else departs, I just wanted to recognize we have representatives from Council President Ed Flynn's office and from Boston Transportation Department. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So what do we do about dust? How do we mitigate dust? The whole idea of not generating dust at the start has been baked into the construction specifications, into the plans filed with DEP, into the conversations we've had with the contractor. We've been before you folks several times. We've heard your concerns. So mitigating dust during construction, there's multiple options we have. Water application is typical of construction, but in this case, we're going to bring up the level a little bit. We're going to be sweeping the streets. We'll have dedicated water misters to target specific activities that may have the potential to generate more dust. As we've said, the big thing is in the Tosca area, it's going to have a cover at the end of the day, either stone or fabric, asphalt, such that overnight, and when conditions aren't controlled by active construction activities, those soils will be covered. As Steve pointed out before, the big thing is the trucks are not driving across these impacted soils. They're going to be the staging and the sequencing program that he developed and that we've committed here keeps the trucks driving on pavement so that there's a potential for tracking the soils is mitigated. But in addition to that, we're also going to wash the trucks before they leave the site. Tire washes, all that stuff will be captured and managed as part of the project. Excellent. So as part of prior to construction, we took a look at background dust monitoring and the dust levels in the neighborhood and in the area along the construction corridor. And as we've discussed, there's a few locations that have the potential to generate dust while we're doing our piece of the construction. We need to understand some of those activities. Some of them you see here that can contribute to dust in the area that's not necessarily related to our construction project. And part of the evaluation of this is to keep an eye on the wind direction, so that if there's things happening at East Street or at the property adjacent to the Mahoney Park, we'll be able to tell what's going on based on the telemetry that we have in the local parks, but also the wind direction. And as things change, the sea breeze comes in the summertime, we're going to revise what we're considering upwind and downwind. Next slide.
Before you leave that slide, and I just wanted to thank Ellie for the contact information for the developer that have the amount of dirt out there. It seemed like there has been some covering done, which is helpful, but more would be better from our point of view. Many of these projects, as Bill stated, are not Massport projects. They're existing out there. We would love to get your support to reach out to these developers. Again, they're not Massport property. They're not Massport projects.
That pile there that you see in the top left side, that is to be developed very shortly. There, it'll have to be moved anyway. But I called again about it.
Thank you. But you can see, like, on this stage, the 14, in this lot, it was a bloom of dirt throughout the day.
Where is that?
Right here.
I think they were crushing concrete. They were mixing dirt with concrete that they crushed. So whatever, obviously we're going to do our part, but we would love other projects nearby to do their part.
I wouldn't have seen that, but...
I'm sorry. So Massport in the license official want the community to...
No, we're doing dust monitoring. We just want to make sure that as we're trying to do dust monitoring for this site, we were trying to identify other sites that had huge piles that were going to generate in wind a lot of dust. So we could have them cover their dust piles, which they should be covered. So the alarms just aren't triggering all the time.
So could the licensed site professionals send that to the Department of Environmental Protection? Given that it's a community of interest? Well, I mean, it's still a lot, right? The enforcement agency versus asking the neighborhood to do that.
Well, we weren't asking them to approach the developers. We just wanted a contact to try to assist, because we just thought they may.
We're not an enforcement agency, so we can't walk to the site and tell him to cover his pile of dirt. We can.
The licensed site professionals regularly engaged in what's legal. That's the seem like a place to.
We're not an enforcement agency, Senator.
Right, but you can report this to DEP if there's a concern. You're not putting the neighborhood to try.
Obviously,
we weren't putting anything on them. We just thought we could have a helpful relationship. If they had been a part of this project through the neighborhood association, that they would have a contact. That's all. We weren't asking anyone to go cover it or tell someone to cover it. We just want to know if we had a contact.
This isn't going to result in when you have a high elevation of dust or contaminants registered in the field monitors. You're not going to turn around and say, well, what wasn't us? It was Pacella's construction site.
We're not going to do that. We're going to stop the work.
Huh?
We'll stop our work. If they're causing us to trigger off, we're going to stop our work because our monitors are going off.
Okay.
We're not going to say that. We're not going to say that's theirs. We're not going to do that.
Excuse, that's all I'm saying.
We're not looking for excuses. This is way too important of work in a dirty area. Go ahead, sir.
Regarding your dust mitigations efforts, I have a little concern about, it's standard practice in construction usually, but this is one of the most highly contaminated sites across Massachusetts. If you look at the DEP, EPA sites, you got one on Dodd Avenue, you got the one down here on Cypher Street. Back to my point, the use of water. Where is now the water's contaminated when you're digging up and moving the earth. How will you contain the water used for the mitigation of the plumes?
The dust control is an art to not applying too much water to create runoff, but also to mitigate the dust control. And that's the plan, is to just use enough water There are erosion controls on the project for stormwater and things, but these folks, D.W. White, have been doing construction for a long time, and we know that the right amount of water, as you know, to apply to knock the dust down is different than the amount of water to flood the street or start moving things. There's also plans in place with DP and EPA to control sediment, to make sure that sedimentation doesn't occur, blocking up, putting filters in the catch basins, putting up erosion controls along the edges of the work zone. So all those big factors come together to knock the dust down, control the dust, but not create a new problem.
So along with the wattles and hay bales, along with the mesh, and of course putting some kind of fabric into the sewer covering, what other methods could you use to make sure and prevent that none of the runoff enters the sewer system?
In our decontamination area, where we wash the tires and we have our guys clean their hands, all that water's collected and disposed of off-site. It'll be disposed of off-site. It's not going to be dumped back in the catch basins. It's not going to be let to run into the ground. We're collecting it. There's a liner in the decontamination station. There's a place with a sump to pump that water out and collect it. And the same with our personnel's hand wash and things like that.
And will the monitoring of silica not be an issue at this location?
The dust monitoring data that we collect also takes into account silica.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the main update. As requested, we've gotten permission from Boston Parks Department to install the 3 doghouse dust monitoring stations in A Street Park, right out here, Flaherty Park, and then the Brian Mahoney Community Gardens location. Typical pictures of the dust monitoring stations are shown on the right. Solar powered, they report automatically up to a website. The dust monitoring we've done to date prior to the start of construction hasn't shown any elevated readings except when they cut the grass or weed whack along the street or maybe use a backpack blower. We had a couple times when the dust monitors recorded an elevated reading. We sent somebody over and sure enough they were weed whacking or mowing the grass. And it's typical with that once they stop doing that work, the dust levels drop right back down. And in general, all the parks show the same levels of background. We also did the sampling of the community gardens as requested. We sampled out here the soils in the garden areas for A Street and also at Mahoney Community Garden. About 18 samples total submitted to laboratory for analysis and got those results back. They've been shared with the community LSP and all the samples came back below the MCP standards for that applicable. And also to note, we have put signs as requested on the dust monitoring stations so that if people wonder what they are or if they have questions, they can take a snap of the QR code and then take them to the website for more information.
That's it. So I know we fielded a number of questions and answered them as already, but we're willing to stay until we answer more.
I just want to make a comment about the trees.
Yep.
I do love trees, except that the city, who would be, well, we don't know who will be responsible for Cypher Street after this is all over, but
If we put them on our property, we'll take care of
the
them.
city doesn't maintain trees. The trees in the neighborhood, they don't.
If the
They
ones
just
on our
don't.
property, we'll put them on our maintenance schedule with our maintenance, so we would handle them.
Okay, I just want to clarify my opinion.
Yeah.
That's all. That I'm not a tree hugger, but I'm not a tree hater.
All right. And we can have the conversation if we identify some spots. We'll put them in. If they die, we replace them, and we try to maintain them the best we can.
question for the gentleman at the microphone.
Yes,
Is the
sir.
same guy that ran the first meeting at the common school for DOT?
No, he's retired. I'm in his place.
Okay. He should have been gone.
He's my boss.
He should have been gone. He shouldn't have been your boss either.
Well, if we have no, Senator, do you have, we're going to wrap up if that's all right. Yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming out again. We appreciate your engagement.
Thanks, folks.
We'll be in touch.